Hello everybody and welcome to the first part of the tutorial about how to use HLOD system in our plugin. I already made an introduction video, please watch that if you didn't. And this video will be multi-part. Each one we will discuss about different aspects of the new HLOD system that is added in our plugin. I will show you how you can use this system to make a huge scene like this. So in this video we are going to talk about the game assets. In our plugin, we have created an asset management tool. Also, we have created an entire separate asset importing process. In our system, you can define many more asset properties on Blender side, and everything will be imported automatically in Godot side. I can say with our system, at first you need to spend time to set up everything and learn how everything works. But after that, everything will be much faster. As an example, you can define different mesh LODs, collisions, and even the physics type of your assets in Blender side. We will talk about these things in this video, but before even creating your asset, there is an important step that you should take. First, we should define what material and texture are used in our asset. As an example, here are my assets, and these two textures are used to create these assets. By the way, I made this project only as a demo. You may use much better assets and textures. But what is certain is that you need to use minimal amount of the texture and material. I really encourage you to use things like trim sheet and tileable textures, which let you build various modular assets with only few textures. After you define your material, you just need to create a Blender file for your material. Obviously, in Blender side, material is not exactly like in Godot side. Here I defined 4 materials with these 2 textures. One is called stone close and other one is stone far. Basically, a stone far is the same as a stone close. I just removed its normal map and I just created a much simpler shader for it so it can be used for building far away. Similarly, we have plank close and plank far. Now the important part is you should to be consistent with your material naming. You should choose a good and understandable name for your material and stick to them. Also, the material name in Godot side should be same as here. Well, after that, just right click on each material and mark that as an asset. Save this Blender file somewhere and let us proceed to creating our asset. So imagine this is the Blender file which I want to create my modular assets. Now here I can go to the file and link, and then I just open the material blend file which I have created and I add all the material in that blend file. So I can use this material right now on my assets. Now let's talk about how asset importing process works. First thing you need to do is to group your asset in different Blender file. For example, I just put all these modular pieces in this Blender file, and if I have another type of asset, maybe I can create another Blender file for them. After that, I just export each of this Blender file into a GLB file into Godot project directory. Now the important part is that each asset should remain in its Blender file and it should follow a consistent naming convention. So we should not change an asset name and we should not move it to another Blender file. So let me show you how this works by a simple Godot project. Here I have an empty Godot project. First, download the latest version of our plugin and activate that. It is possible that the plugin will not work for the first time, so just restart Godot and hopefully everything will work. Well, now you can see at bottom we have a new panel called asset. So right now we don't have any assets here. So let's create some assets in Blender and import them here. I have created a Blender file in which I have 3 mesh in here: a box, a cone, and a monkey head. I use the material which I added in another Blender file and I put them on my assets. Then I just export them to the GLTF file. I just create an import folder in my project root directory, and for the export setting, in the material section, you want to export the material but set image export to none. Just before importing my asset, I need to introduce my material to the system. So just click on the setting button, open the material tab and just add those 4 materials. Please note that the name of these materials are the same as those used in Blender. You can also change the material name in this panel. Okay, now just drag the GLTF file on asset panel. So this is the import window. You can see we have all the assets with their name in this tab. The next tab is the material tab. And as we use the same name material in Godot and Blender, you can see this automatically detected our materials. We also have the tag section, which I will talk about that later. And at the end, we have a GLB tab. In this tab, I specify the Blender file path from which this asset was exported. You will see why this is useful in a moment. Please just, if you see this window for import info.json, just click on discard locals. We will fix this in future. So now you can modify each of these assets easily in Blender if you need it. For that, you need to specify the Blender executable file path in the editor setting. Now, if we also specify the Blender file path in import window, which we already did, we can modify any asset in Blender like this. Right click on that and press modify in Blender. You can see Blender will open and it will zoom on the specific asset that we chose. So as an example, let's modify this monkey head. I just move these vertices and now I come to the export tab. This time we don't need to specify the export file path. Just click on export Godot asset and it will automatically be saved on the correct path with the correct export setting. Well, right now we don't have an automatic import, but maybe in future we will add that. So for now, I just drag my GLB file again, and as you can see, it's detect which mesh has been changed. Import that again, and now you can see the monkey head mesh is updated. So where these meshes are saved? In the project directory, we have a folder called masset. Under this folder, each type of asset will get saved in one of these folders depending on its type. Meshes are saved in the folder meshes, obviously. If I open that, you can see my meshes are stored here. There are two things that you should know about. First of all, this is not the Godot mesh resource. This is a special type of the mesh which is added in this plugin, and it is called mesh. We had to create a mesh class from the scratch for some technical reason. Also, if you notice, each mesh is saved with just an integer number, and each asset ID starts from the number divisible by 10. Any number not divisible by 10 is just a different LOD of that mesh. For example, number 21 here would be the LOD1 of the mesh ID 20, and so on. I will show you later how you can import different mesh LODs. We also have another folder called masset editor. Please keep this folder or even make a backup of it so you do not lose it. This folder contains all information about our meshes, Blender paths, GLB paths, asset names, and so on. Also, our Baker scene are stored here. The data in this folder is only for development time. So this folder should be excluded when you release your game. And the way you can exclude that is this. Just in the export window, exclude all the content in this folder. Well, now let's see how to use these meshes. If I double click on one of these meshes, you can see a node will appear on the scene, but nothing is showing. Basically, this node should not even be added here. And this is a node, it's called masset mesh, and this node will not be available in the release mode. Basically, these meshes should be added in the Baker scene. So later we can bake them into HLOD resource. So let's make a Baker scene. Click on the plus button on the asset panel and add a Baker scene. So here if I add a node, still nothing show up. And also I have a bunch of error in my console. This error tells us we need to add an octree for our HLOD system. Basically, octree is a class which is responsible for calculating LODs. You can pass millions of points into that with different positions, and in each loop update, it will tell us the LOD change of each point. I have a better video for that. If you want to watch, I will put the link of that video in the video description. So the way you can create your octree is this. I just create a folder called global and I create a script in it. Change the inheritance type of this script to octree. Also, I activate tool mode, so this will work also in editor. And in the init function, I just change some setting for my octree. This means each object with the distance less than 30 meters is LOD 0, between 30 to 60 meters is LOD 1, and so on. After that, I enable this octree for HLOD system. There are multiple systems which work on top of octree. HLOD is one of them. Okay, after that, just add this script as a global script in Godot. And hopefully now you can see your meshes here. Now let's bake this to HLOD resource and see what's happening. Okay, as you can see, the HLOD resource appear in asset panel. Its icon is not showing here. I think this is happening because after adding my plugin, I did not restart Godot. So let me restart Godot and I will come back here. I don't know what's happening. I think Godot is not recognizing well my plugin, but after removing and re-adding my plugin, everything works. You can see as I bake this scene, my HLOD will add it with an icon. Also at the top left side of this icon, the HLOD watermark is appear. And this shows that this is not a mesh and this is HLOD resource. Now, if I want to see only HLOD resources in asset panel, you can come here and hold Control and click on HLOD, and then you can see only HLOD. You can also add tags and filter based on that, but I will not talk about them in this video. Now, as I baked my HLOD resource, now if I open another scene and I add my HLOD there, you can see I have exactly the same meshes. But this time we don't use nodes. Instead, we use HLOD resource, which is much more efficient. I will talk more about the HLOD stuff in another video. Right now, I just want to focus more on the importing process. So let's see how we can import meshes with different LOD. In general, not only for the mesh LODs, for any other properties that you want to add on your asset in the Blender side, we use this naming convention. First comes the name of the asset. It could be table, wall, anything else. This name should be unique in every Blender file. You can have two different assets with the same name in two different Blender files, but in each of them, every name should be unique. So after name, you put underscore, and here comes argument name. Argument name can be different things. We will see different argument names in this video. And after that comes another underscore, and we have the argument value. So in the case that we want to add a mesh with different LOD, the argument name will be LOD, and the argument value will be integer number corresponding to that LOD. So for example, if I want to create a mesh with different LOD for my monkey head, this is how I add it. Monkey underscore LOD0, monkey underscore LOD1, and so on. Here I create my monkey head with different level of detail, and I name them according to the naming convention that we talked about. Just re-import that, and here in the baker scene there is a way that you can see different LODs of your meshes. You can see here that the monkey head is changing. One thing you should note here is that if you add or remove LOD meshes, that could break any HLOD scene which you have baked with that mesh. We are trying to make an automatic bake in this plugin, but it still did not happen. So for now, we need to rebake any HLOD which has monkey head in that. Now there are a couple of rules which you should know about the mesh level of detail. Right now, my monkey head level of detail are like this. If I remove, for example, the monkey head of LOD1, then in Godot, when my mesh reach the LOD1 and there is no mesh for that, then what happened is that it will use the lower valid LOD. So in this case, as I removed LOD1, it will be filled with LOD0. If I remove LOD0, nothing will replace that as there is no lower LOD mesh available. So the mesh will not be shown at LOD0. These rules apply for LOD3 and higher. So LOD3 will cover any LOD bigger than 3. If you want that your mesh to not be shown after a certain LOD, you need to define an option for that. Options also follow the same naming pattern which I told you before. Just create an empty beside your mesh and rename that to the monkey mesh cutoff 5. Mesh cutoff is an option which defines at what LOD this monkey head should not be shown. You can also define an option as a global. This means if that option is not defined for a specific object, it will use the global option. Same as before, I just create an empty, and instead of using the name of the object, I use underscore global keyword. Just please note, if and only if an object does not contain that option, it will use the global option. So in this case, all of the objects will not be shown at LOD5 and above. Okay, now let's see how we can add collisions in Blender side. By the way, you are not forced to add collision on Blender side, you can also do it in Godot side. The way you create a collision shape in Blender is to use this naming convention. First you put the asset name, then underscore, and then you use call keyword. After that, just put another underscore and then specify the type of your shape. The type of the shape can be box, sphere, capsule, cylinder, concave, and convex. By the way, convex and concave are a bit different, which I will tell you later how they work. So let's create a collision for our box, for example. By the way, as you can see, for my asset mesh, I did not specify underscore LOD underscore 0. If my asset in Blender is a mesh and does not contain underscore LOD underscore 0, then on import, it's assumed that this is an asset with LOD 0. Now I just create an empty beside my box. Okay, now I need to change the name of my empty exactly same as my asset. I put its name box, underscore call, and then I specify the collision type, which is in this case box. Now it is better that this empty visually also be a box. So in the data panel for my empty, I just change the visual type of that to a box. And now I just scale my empty box and I position that on my asset. Okay, let me show you how you can create other type of the collision shapes. For cylinder, you can do the same. I create an asset and I name it tube. Then I just add empty. You can see we don't have a visualization for cylinder, but that is not important. Just select box here, then adjust the shape of this box to fit on this cylinder. And then for the collision type name, I will choose cylinder. For a sphere, also the same rule apply here. Here how you can create a sphere collision shapes. So now let's go back to monkey head. One important thing that you should note about the monkey head is that now we have multiple mesh LOD. It is important that your collision shape is positioned with the correct offset to the mesh with LOD 0. So for example, if I created a capsule collision shape for my monkey head, I need to position it based on the mesh with LOD 0. Now that we have created most of my simple collision shapes, let's see how we can add complex collision shapes. I just remove the capsule shapes because I want to add complex collision shapes for my monkey head. We have two types of the complex collision shapes. We have convex and concave. And these collision shapes are generated from a mesh. So we need to provide a mesh for this. For example, I can copy my lowest LOD for monkey and I just rename it to monkey called concave. And that is it. We will have a concave collision shape after we import this. You don't need to position the concave or convex collision shape based on the mesh with LOD 0. It is just important that the mesh that you have provided has the same origin. By the way, also it is better to make it more low poly for concave collision shape. And I suggest to use convex collision shape instead of concave shape as its performance is much better. Also, you cannot have both convex and concave shapes. You can have only one of them. Now I just export this asset and let's see if they work. So here I just create a small scene. I just double click on my box and as you can see, it places it on my scene. Now, as I selected this box, if I double click on that box again, another box will add it to my scene at the exact same position of the previous box. Now I just click on the X button on top here and it will place it on the right hand side of that box. And these X, Y, Z button are in a local coordinate of that mesh. Basically, this placement works with the ABB of that mesh. So I'm adding other box too. And then I'm adding other assets. And finally, I'm going to bake this. You can see all collisions that are added in Blender are working. Now, what if I want to add collision in Godot side? For example, for our floor, we added many boxes to create this floor. Each of these boxes has its own collision shape. What if I remove all of these collision shapes and instead I add a single collision box for entire floor? Okay, for that first I select all my boxes for my floor and I deactivate their collisions. And then I add a collision shape node with a box shape which cover the entire floor. And now if I rebake, you can see everything works again fine. One thing about this system, as you can see, you don't need to create a static body for the shapes. This system is a bit different for adding different physics settings. So how we can add different physics settings for our collision shapes? And up to this point, we use the default physics setting in Godot. To add different settings, first you need to create your physics settings. Open the setting panel, just click on the tab which you have added material before. Here at the right side, we have a panel for static body setting. Add a new setting. I name it S_setting 0, for example. Then as you can see, as I selected this setting, the corresponding resource file for this setting is selected in Godot file system. And in inspector tab, I can modify this resource. I just modify that and that is it. But like before, please be consistent about the naming of your physics setting. For any physics that you have added, in Godot side, if I click on this collision shape, you can see I can select which physics setting I want to use. Also in Blender side, you can add the physics option for each individual asset, or you can define it as a global option like this. Here the argument name is physics and the value is the string name corresponding to the physics setting that we have created in Godot side. Okay guys, that was an introduction about the HLOD system. In this video we almost saw how the import process works. In future we might add more options to the importing process, so check out wiki page for that. In the next video I will focus more on Godot side and I will show you how you can create a scene with join mesh with different type of items. Till the next video, have a good time and see you later.